Boom! Welcome to the first episode of Sergeant Major Sit Rep here on Red Voice News. I'm John Gillette, Arizona State Representative, retired Army Sergeant Major, Command Sergeant Major, and also law enforcement tactical officer running a security SWAT team, numerous presidential details, the whole 9 yards. But I'm also a dad and a father and a concerned citizen and patriot. So on this show, we're going to talk about news, politics, history, just a little bit of everything. But for the first episode, I recently got back from the border, and I want to talk about that border trip because it was something. I've been to the border numerous times, used to live on the border in Cochise County. It's worse now than it ever has been. It's to the point where it's almost unimaginable what's going on. I'm going to show you some videos, some pictures, talk about them as we go, and we'll really get into that and a little bit of HCR 2060 that we just passed here in Arizona. But before we get started, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Now, those folks are just better people than we are. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. These men that stormed the beaches of Normandy, many killed before even getting off the boat, killed before they could actually do any of their job, before they could pull the trigger in anger. They were mowed down by machine gun fire. Horrendous scene. We've all seen the footage, the real footage, the World War II in color footage. Some folks have actually just seen Saving Private Ryan, and that looks to be a very lifelike depiction of what actually occurred. Horrendous carnage, but for a purpose, and that was for our country to save the world. American exceptionalism joined the war to save the world. So think about that today in your daily business. Just think about the sacrifice. Me sitting right here in this chair on the very first episode of Sergeant Major Sit Rep, I'm allowed to do this because of those men and their fight for freedom and allowing us our First Amendment right. So as you go about your day, like I said, just think about their great sacrifice, the sacrifice of everyone around them. My uncle was a World War II veteran. My aunt worked in a Stuart Warner gauge factory making airplane gauges. Everybody in America worked towards a common goal, and I would like to see us get there again someday. But moving on, the U.S. border in Arizona, Yuma sector, San Luis area, atrocious nonsense going on. You're going to be enraged. First photo we're going to show you, I'm sure everybody remembers the news story about the Church's Chicken. It's going to be on your screen there. And this is a Church's Chicken restaurant. As you can see there in the photo, it is closed, but there was a tunnel 35 feet underground from Church's Chicken to the checkpoint. You'll see the checkpoint image with the large towers, the fence, the lights, all the stuff makes it look like, an impregnable, non-vulnerable area. But this tunnel, 35 feet underground to Church's Chicken, had a basic light rail system in it. So the light rail system operated a train back and forth going underneath the checkpoint, and it was air conditioned, fully energized with electricity, and it not only moved people, but it moved drugs, especially fentanyl, back and forth across the border every day. Now, you've heard everyone talk about, we have cameras, we have seismic activity readers, we've got all this technology, and the Democrats want more technology on the border because that's what stops it. Technology is only good if you plug it in. The cameras that are up there, and I'm not going to tell you where all the cameras are, but in this particular place, this has already been on the news, there are obviously overt cameras, there are covert cameras, there are seismic sensors, but in this case, in the area of the tunnel, as you can see from the checkpoint photo, you see the towers, the lights, the microwave, you see everything, especially that tall tower, the one next to it, the Trump border wall. But what they failed to tell you is that the Biden administration disconnected the cameras and the seismic activity readers, which I'm not going to give you their correct name. That stuff was removed. The fiber optic cable that controls them, we are told by Border Patrol officials, is wound up on carts, sitting inside of a Connex just melting away in the desert sun. So we do have all this expensive technology, but it's not being employed. This is how they were able to drill a tunnel. And when I say drill, this was not a tunnel that was just hand dug willy-nilly. This is a concreted tunnel with a rail system in it. So we talk about all the time of what's going on at the border. And to give you a better depiction, we talked about the Trump wall, and Trump talked about the wall. The Trump wall being much different than the Biden wall. You'll see from the Trump wall photos, the Trump wall is a steel wall buried underneath the ground into concrete, so you cannot tunnel underneath that. You see the rocks around it, the revetment, the difficult terrain, the wire, all the lights. That's the Trump wall. Now, keep in mind, the Trump wall costs less than the Obamacare website, and the Democrats fought every single bit of that wall. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of the Biden gate. This is the typical wall type style that the Biden administration is putting in. That's double chain link on a very flimsy steel structure, and it's a gate. It's not going through the earth. It is bolted to the earth onto concrete, very easily open and closed. Border Patrol uses this particular gate, but the rest of the walls are configured the same way in their construction. Just basically a very flimsy steel chain link fence mounted to concrete. Now, these concrete mounts are very similar that you would see on the highway system when they're doing some work. They're movable by forklift. So the wall is obviously temporary. You can pick the sections up by forklift and move them. The Trump wall was more of a permanent structure. Now, some of the Trump wall that ended in certain areas was bolstered by Connex boxes or shipping containers, what have you, whatever you'd like to name them, by the Ducey administration in Arizona. Katie Hobbs' administration removed those, and we're going to show you exactly where these points are. If you look at the next clip, it will show you the Indian reservation and the end of the Trump wall, and you'll see a sign there talking about littering. Right here, you see where these barriers are, these steel barriers that are just laying on the ground. That's on the Indian reservation. The Indian reservation did not allow the Trump wall to be installed so animals and people can cross back and forth. So this is what you have at the very end of the Trump wall moving onto the reservation. One side of that is America, one side of that is Mexico. So you tell me that's a closed border. That is not a closed border. As we were going along on our trip, we looked at some different areas, and in these areas, we expected to see something. And sure enough, we're talking about 1:30 on a Monday morning, as we're out wandering around, we do see something. And we see migrants, and you're going to see a short video. It's not a very good video. It was taken in haste in the middle of the night, but you're going to see a video of the second batch of migrants being separated. These illegals, mainly from Colombia and Paraguay, are being separated by Border Patrol. Their shoelaces are being removed and their belts are being removed. And let's roll that video and just take a quick look at that, and then we'll show you some of the individuals that we spoke with. So you see the video right here. I'll shut up and let you listen. Now, mind you, this is the second batch. The first batch, we were on the other side and we weren't able to get down there in time. The first batch had already been taken off by bus. So this is the second batch that walked in. Now, you heard KGP scold Peter Ducey a while back on Fox News when he asked a question very similar to, as these people are walking across the border, she stopped him right there with her ridiculous smirk. Well, it just doesn't work like that. We got to call BS on that. It works exactly like that. So we could see on the highway where vehicles would stop on the Mexican highway by the dam, crossing the Colorado River, crossing the border easement, and getting to the fence. So you see the vehicle stop, and about 20 minutes later, the people that departed from the vehicle walked across the American side to the border fence. So they walked through Mexico, and we're talking about 200 yards here. We're not talking a long walk. Middle of the night, they walk right onto an American soil where Border Patrol awaits them, because that's what they're doing under the Biden administration. Border Patrol is relegated to a personnel processing center. Now, while we're down there on the trip, I'm gonna hold this up and we'll post a better copy online. But as we're down there, you'll see next to the railroad tracks, looking around for typical evidence. This card is a Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Customs and Border Protection baggage claim check. Now, we were told by the Democrats this is not happening. We are not tracking baggage. We're not loading. We're not unloading. We're not doing the transportation, but we have a claim check. And in the video that you just saw, at a later point in that video, you will see the Border Patrol agents handing every illegal one of these cards. It's a perforated card that you can tear the tag off, and on the card, it's owner signature from to whatever transportation company and a file number. On the back of the card, it says for Department of Homeland Security use. Is it a trunk, grip, box, other, or suitcase? Estimated weight, number of pounds, file number, and remarks. So with that, you have Section 8 of the U.S. Code 1324, A, B, C, D, and F talk about the facilitation being a crime. Now, I wrote a bill specifically on facilitation and NGOs forcing their way into the government system and transporting these illegals all over the country. That bill was vetoed by Governor Hobbs, but it dealt specifically with this issue. Now, it wasn't punitive in the form of criminal, but civil is where I kept the bill at. So we weren't going to arrest bus drivers. We weren't going to throw people in jail, but the NGOs that were doing this and the nonprofits that operated outside of the law, meaning if they did not have a lawful contract to move them state to state or place to place, their business license would be revoked in the state of Arizona. And of course, I can't remember the exact verbiage that the governor put on the veto letter. It was something that it could have unintended consequences for those trying to help migrants. That's exactly what it was designed to do. People that are unlawfully helping the migrants come across the border, these illegals that are in violation of the law, and the entities that are helping them cross that are also in violation of the law. So we talked about these things, and we found the baggage claim check. And as we're looking, and we had some translators, some of our own House members that speak Spanish, and I went down there with my best Spanish, which is poor at best, and we talked to them, and you'll see a picture of a Colombian. He's from Bogota, Colombia, and he's dressed in white, short, well-kept red hair, blue eyes. He has his baggage. This gentleman right here, pretty clean for just coming across the border. He said he was trying to escape his country due to being persecuted because he's of the gay community. Everyone that has been to Central America, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, no, there is no persecution of gays. And what was striking, every one of the people in that video, in the photo, and to include a married man and woman, had the same exact line. So you see this and you wonder, wow, they're saying the same exact thing. It's hard to get a group of soldiers or a group of law enforcement officers, even a group of people, to memorize something almost verbatim and recite it at will. But yet these people could do that. So they've obviously been coached on what to say. And it was actually to the point of, I swear I was in fear for my life and stuff. That's how, they put it out there. Just very basic, very coached, very polished. And for all of them to have the same story, we're throwing the flag on that. That's a foul. So we hear the Democrats all the time talk about the border and how this sector is down. And this sector is down, but the Tucson sector is way up, and they're actually shipping people to this sector to help process. We know this because several federal agents that have spoken with us that are not of Border Patrol, that are on leave from their typical assignment with the Air Marshal Service, DEA, other government agencies are taking TDY tours to assist Border Patrol. We don't fault them for that. They're doing what they can do to make a buck and stay in the federal system and build their retirement. But they're coming down to the border just to process. They're not doing a law enforcement duty. They're not doing a function of what they would normally do. They are processing people. But the more we learn about the flights, from Central America using these very baggage claims that the Dems tell us don't exist. I did a little research into that as well. So the flights are obviously a real thing. They are being flown in across the border, so hence numbers at the border are down. They're still crazy high, but they're down from what they were a couple months ago. So when you do a little digging into it, you can look this up for yourself, but it's Section 8, 1185 of the U.S. Code talks about travel control of citizens and aliens. And I want to bring your attention to page 1, Section 4, paragraph F, and under definitions on the second page, which would be the 1994, 1978, and 1956 amendments to this actual document, this law, state that the Panama Canal Zone, for definition, is part of the United States. Now, you know, Jimmy Carter gave up the Canal Zone. I used to live there, served at Fort Clayton, Fort Sherman, and Fort Davis. Now, we gave that up. We have no real controlling interest in the canal other than a little bit of maintenance, and we help, we're helping the Chinese and the Panamanian government operate the canal. But this is how they're getting away with it. They're using a 1956 amendment to this law to say the canal zone is U.S. territory, and they're issuing pardons in the canal zone to fly these people over here. Now, the Democrats go off on a tangent and say this is just about racism and hurting the brown guy and all this blah, blah, blah. Again, we're going to throw a flag on that one because what it's about is the rule of law. 1324 A and B, 1185, Section 8 of the U.S. Code clearly define our law. The law is not being followed by the Biden administration. It's that simple. And, you know, for our haters out there, you can squawk and piss and moan all you want, but you can go look up the actual law. Go to the Congress website, look up the law, read this law for yourself and see if this law is being enforced. You know, give it an honest read, see if you really think this law is being enforced, because it's not. Nowhere in any of these laws does it say we allow a illegal to walk from Mexico, come to the U.S. border, be instantly processed, and within 24 hours released willy-nilly into the country. We lost over 85,000 children, but you bet your ass we can track their baggage with this cool little form. Now, coming back to the form, every government employee, every former soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, what have you, you know how government forms are built and made. On the bottom of the form, you'll see a form number, you'll see the government printing office address and number, and you'll see the proponent agency. And then when you go to look that form up at the proponent agency, you'll see definitions and you'll see actual step-by-step on how to fill out the form. Every government form is that way. Worked for the Census Bureau, worked for the military, I worked counterterrorism with another government agency. Every government form has a form number. Every government form has instructions. This has none of it. So it's a locally devised form, or so we're told, that doesn't exist. But yet we have it, and we gave it to the press, and we haven't heard a word from the press. So that's going to bring me to kind of part 2 of this. You heard Mayorkas. He stood in front of Congress and he said the border is closed and secure. Closed and secure. I told you about KJP telling Ducey that people can't walk into the United States from Mexico. They literally can. And we watched it in real time walk across into the United States and get processed. So Mayorkas, his impeachment, the Democrats said was a sham. He lied to Congress. 100% flat lied. Laws are not being enforced. People are walking across the border, and it is 100% non-secure. He knew those cameras are turned off. He knew that the seismic sensors are not even plugged in, but yet he stood in Congress and said the borders is secure. Now, we had a press conference the next day about noon, and during that time, a reporter asked one of our folks, what is the correct number? You know, because we're speaking of the new Biden, which we predicted right on this channel. Predicted this several months ago that Biden would pull some whiz-bang, fast action, and executive order on Border Patrol. And of course, sure enough, he does. He writes some nonsense up that actually has zero effect whatsoever. 2,500 a day and they're going to close it. Come on. So the reporter asked that question. Well, how many people do you feel it appropriate a day before we close the border? I can tell you the appropriate number is freaking zero. Zero. If they are in between the port of entry, the lawful location in which you cross from the U.S. into Mexico or the Mexico into the U.S., the correct number in between there is zero. Now, we haven't even spoken about the gotaways. These are the people you saw in the video footage that wanted to be caught. They walked into the open arms of the Border Patrol knowing they're going to read their little statement and be processed right into this country. The ones that are not caught are the ones that we are most concerned about. 168 or more countries. We have tons of Chinese coming in. We've got all these people just flooding the border, and to avoid Border Patrol should be a red flag, because Border Patrol right now is not stopping anyone. They're processing everyone. They're going to New York. They're getting hotel rooms, displacing American citizens. And the people that are not doing that, that should be a red flag. Should be a red flag. So with our border trip, as I said, we did the press conference. During the press conference, the very press conference that we were discussing this, the San Luis, Mexico police chief was murdered by the cartels. So I'm quite certain that they made a point of doing this during our press conference. As we're talking about illegals and the sham that's going on the border and the amount of fentanyl, the rape trees, the human carnage on the border, they sent a clear message back to us, and they murdered that police chief that was doing his very best to stop some of this activity. So you won't see this on the mainstream media. You won't see this on the news, which we've seen no footage. ABC 15 covered our press conference, but they sure didn't cover that. So you heard it right here, and you heard it here first on Sergeant Major Sitrep. So, pardon me, in summary, the border is wide open. The electronic countermeasures that we have, some of the best in the world, to detect the border crossers, is not being employed. It's some of it's put up, some of it's plugged in, some of it's not. So we hear the Democrats talk about we just need more money for infrastructure. Well, we're going to call BS on that because the infrastructure is not even plugged in. Well, we need more money for Border Patrol agents. They've got agents from every single agency in the federal system working on the border, and they can't keep up. What we need is to stop the flow. Shut the border down 100%, except for points of entry where everything can be scrutinized, and put our resources there. Anybody coming in between the port of entry, arrested, identified, returned. And the border will fix itself. If they know they can't come across into the waiting arms, then it will stop. You can't have Kamala Harris on one hand calling for all the peace-loving people wanting a better life to come to our country, and at the same time say, well, the border's closed, don't come. They know better. I mean, this is the chaotic world that we live in. It's just a complete mess. And to hear them say that, and then you hear Biden talk about, well, I'm going to do this executive order, we're going to shut it down at this point. And then you have him talking about totally different topics, like removing Benjamin Netanyahu from power, somebody that is a wartime commander in a country that was attacked, a terrorist attack. Remember, there was a ceasefire, and that ceasefire was violated by Hamas. And the Ukraine situation with Russia, China is now threatening to invade Taiwan. We're a mess, and it is the Biden administration fault. I cannot understand what the Democrats don't see. I mean, it's right in front of you. This current geopolitical situation isn't great, especially under this administration. The economy does not inspire confidence. All I can tell you, as a result, we Americans, you and I, that are concerned about our retirement, our money, our future, you got to do something different. There's good news on this front, though. Gold has held its value since the dawn of mankind. Gold is mentioned in every book of the Bible from Genesis through Revelation. Now, RVM sponsors this, and this is a great opportunity here, and it plays into exactly what we're talking about. A faith-based precious metals company, Genesis Gold Group, helping Americans provide for their life savings from threats facing our nation. This is what I love about them. No gimmicks, no BS, no big gold company insults telling you they're going to send free silver or these other crazy claims of 10,000 in free cash. What they do is they want you to be fully aware of all your options, not just gold, not just other precious metals, but the one benefit the seller is that they can educate you along the way. You get a free definitive gold guide to get started, learn more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times. Visit rvmgold.com. And if that doesn't work, fill out the basic contact form and a member of the team will be in touch. Go to Treasure and Trust or rvmgold.com, check it out, and think about your future, your family's future. You see the border, you see the rest of the world on fire. Do something to protect yourself, and it's in precious metals from Genesis Gold Group. I mean, what else are you going to do? You got to do something in these times. This is crazy. So we spoke about the border, spoke a little bit about D-Day. Last thing we're going to talk about is something I'm just starting to learn, and it's part of this world here, how these analytics and these numbers work. The things that we search on the media. I've been on Twitter now for about a year and a half, started posting, started doing these videos, and what I've learned is pretty scary. I spoke about an Army manual a while back here. It was in one of the videos, and this is an Army manual from 1969. And it basically instructs our government how to overtake the media of another government when we're at war, so we can put forth a narrative, put forth propaganda, and put forth information that we want the enemy to see, all in an effort to win the hearts and minds. Now, I've thoroughly read this manual. As a former Intel guy, I've seen this manual, but that's not my wheelhouse, not what I did. But I'm aware of these kind of things. I'm aware of what PSYOPs does. But knowing this and seeing almost the same steps verbatim being employed on our own U.S. citizens, it is scary stuff, because you can read through this paragraph by paragraph and find hundreds of examples. So I did a bill on mRNA vaccines in livestock. That bill was vetoed. The Democrats railed against it, but we don't know why. All we know is they push an agenda. But here's what we do know. From the latest Fauci nonsense, social distancing wasn't a thing. They made it up. So 71 inches, you're safe, or not safe. 72 inches, you're good to go. All made up. Mask didn't work. Ivermectin worked. The government's been lying to you. So we did a story a while back on attacks on our infrastructure and food supply. Now, when you go to Google these things, you don't find them. And people say, I tell people, do your own homework, go read the information. I don't use Google for everything. Of course, we have to use Google for some things. But as we've done the research, and I've listened to some other speakers and some other analytical folks that this is what they do for a living, we're finding out now that Facebook and Google continually blamed their algorithm for miscategorizing or putting the search result lower than it should have been. But recent testimony by the FBI and in Congress, we found two facts. We found one in Hunter Biden's trial, that the Hunter Biden laptop, according to the FBI, is 100% authentic and real. So all the stuff you saw on the laptop is real, folks. The FBI agreed to it. They testified to it in court. Another thing that's real, the train stations, or the train derailments, train station failures, cargo failures of airplanes, airplane failures, and the attack on power plants and food locations. You've seen all the chicken ranches that have burned. You've seen the hog confinement areas that mysteriously exploded from a gas leak, but you don't see them on Google. So what we found out, yes, they have algorithms, but they also have committees. And these are committees of live human beings that actually made up 8 or 9 people, sit around a table, and they review a lot of the top stories, and they decide where they shelve them on Google. and it's normally like between 8 and 15 because they know when you pull up Google, the first one or two results are what people look at. They don't do any further digging. But the more that we see the attack on our American infrastructure, our critical infrastructure, and food supply, it's there. It's there. You just don't see it because Google buries it. Our food supply has never been under an attack like this before. And my bill dealt primarily with beef, which is the prime target for BRICS this week. You heard her announce that they want to test cattle for bird flu at least once a week. Now, these are people that live in the Washington, D.C. area. Arizona is a free range state. So my next door neighbor ranches on, and his neighbor combined, I couldn't even tell you how many acres, probably over 15,000 acres they ranch cattle on. These are free range cattle. Do you think they see these cows every single week? Or these cows migrate with the plant activity, the animal activity, and the water activity? Sure they do. Now, when they go to do a roundup, they do capture all the cattle in, but could you imagine what a steak would cost if they had to go out, track down every cow every week, and take some government-sponsored strip or device to check for bird flu? Come on, folks. They are going after beef. They're going after every single bit of protein, especially beef that we can have. And with the beef being the primary target from everything from climate change, bird flu, yeah, exactly. Cow farts and bird flu, they're using against cattle. So it behooves you to stock up on long-term storage beef, and we have the solution. Preparewithbeef.com, veteran-owned company that sells premium steaks, 25-year shelf life, ribeyes, New York strips, tenderloin, sirloin, beef crumbles, hamburger, beef chunks, everything you need to survive and that protein you need for your home. Prepperbeef.com. Listeners can take 25% off with promo code RVM. Stock up now before Cricket Burgers and the salad steaks, the real meat, come to your door. Remember, preparewithbeef.com. Use promo code RVM. Stock up, buy up, get your code, support veterans. So that bill was floating around a lot out there, and this bill got national attention. Several other states passed this bill. They took my exact bill and they ran this bill. The amount of pushback we got here, not only from the state vet, the governor's office, all the Democrats, atrocious. They even contacted the USDA and forced me to change a part of the bill dealing with labels. The USDA sent me the list of labels that they control and told me what I had to say on the label in the bill. And it was the background color, the font size, the font type, how big it could be, everything about the label. And all we wanted to do was say MNRA free. So a purchaser of beef could look down at that product and say, okay, there's no crazy MNRA vaccines in my food. You want it? Fine, you buy it. It didn't force you to do it, didn't force you not to do it. It left that up to the beef producers. And again, that bill was vetoed, just like the border bill. So the topics we covered today all ended up with a veto. Upcoming episodes, you saw the lawsuit on Arizona Secretary of State with the ghost on the voter rolls. We've already done a couple videos on that. We're going to bring in a good video. I'm going to talk to legal and see if we can share a little bit more information with you. But it's bad, folks. I'm going to leave you with this today. We have the numbers. We are a red country. If we get out and vote, if Republicans get out and vote, we beat the cheat. Arizona alone, we have registered 6% more Republicans over the last 2 years than any other demographic. We have the numbers. If the numbers get out and vote, and I don't care if that's vote by mail, vote by ballot box, however it is you vote, just vote. Select the candidate of your choice and vote, and we win this election. We will beat the cheat, but you got to vote. With that, I'm going to sign off. Stay safe, stay well, stay free. Have a good day.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that have made our country great. Well, I've been a believer in gold and silver for a long time, and I've searched for years for a partner that shares my values. Well, Genesis Gold Group showed me how easy it is to protect your IRA, 401k, or your retirement with gold and silver. Their faith-driven approach to service and stewardship is one that stands out from the rest.
To get your free definitive gold guide and get started learning more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times, visit treasureandtrust.com now. Fill out the basic contact form and a member of the team will be in touch. Again, that's treasureandtrust.com or call 855-625-7766.